Chief Futurist at Futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, and author Nikolas Badminton joining us on Canada Now for his weekly visit. And Nick, this week we look at the world's most experimental city, Almere, the newest city in the Netherlands.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I speak to so many municipalities and cities around the world, and it's always exciting to see the opportunities they have to sort of transform who they are. But this one particular place, Almere in the Netherlands, has been sort of growing exponentially since the 1970s. But they've had a really, really interesting way of building out the city. A lot of public consultation, but they've used gameplay and they've listened to what people want. And they've really stepped up, and they built some really interesting infrastructure.
Yeah, the gameplay is really interesting. Play the City, which is a game-based initiative, and they use it to find out and build what people want in their city. Like, for example, they found many residents wanted to encourage local food production, so they set aside 60% of a neighborhood to support urban agriculture. I love that. It feels like a true city where everybody does have a say.
Yeah, and so many city planners back in the day used to just roll in and say, right, okay, we're going to build the city around getting vehicles from A to B and putting some buses there to take people here and there. They don't think about food. They don't necessarily think about energy. They think about sort of the hard infrastructure. And, humans will live around, the infrastructure needed to make business work in cities. And, I speak extensively about water, energy, and food. And the nexus between them, they've all got a reliance between them, and water is that foundational element. Certainly a lot of water available in the Netherlands, right? And what's really interesting is, growing food in cities is going to become incredibly important. Generating energy in cities, decentralized energy through solar, wind, geothermal even, is going to be incredibly important going forward.
Yeah, well, and with this city, there's more than 200,000 people that live there now in a spot that was entirely once covered by water, and it's the world's largest artificial island, and it was built to alleviate housing pressure in neighboring cities. But this isn't a city that's got all these massive buildings that have gone up. They basically said, hey, the designers and self-builders, you've got free reign. Build what you're going to build, and let's see what you've got.
Yeah, so, they really use their imagination. So individualized homes, tree-lined boulevards, parklands, waterways, local schools, markets, community facilities, a really vibrant community, right? And, taking back or building artificial land on the water is going to be an imperative for the Netherlands as well over the next 100, 200 years. A lot of land in the Netherlands is going to be under sort of duress from the rising sea level, and they've been fighting that for a very long period of time. And people look towards engineers in the Netherlands for helping manage those sort of water tensions that you find in coastal cities. We all want to live on the coast. We all want to be close to water. The trouble is, the flip side of that is that it's going to take back the land from us. So we have to work out what we're going to do here. But it's really interesting. This Play the City initiative has been going just for over 10 years now. But, city planners and farmers, local residents, everyone's getting together to play a game and to imagine. This is futures work to me. So, when you're thinking about the future of a city, you're talking 10, 20, 30, even 50 plus years. And it's really, really important. I do a lot of gameplay with my clients. And in fact, I just had a client that was in Paris, and they were playing games. 80 people were playing games to imagine the future of aerospace and a number of different things. It's so exciting. The job that I have is about play, and it's about imagination, and it's really about being curious with the world. Things like Almere and what they did with the city it's like a blueprint for many cities around the world to step up and have some fun with the idea of what a city could be versus more skyscrapers, more roads, more infrastructure for business,
Right, but are cities going to adopt those kinds of initiatives and that kind of out of the box thinking, and can they even do it given what's been built up in these cities already?
I've really seen evidence of cities stepping up and making some pretty tough decisions. what we have to do, like there are cities that are, and we've chatted about this in other segments, like moving to become more pedestrianized. Paris en Commune and Mayor Hidalgo over there is doing a big initiative to sort of shift away from being, cars downtown Paris and parking and all that being given a precedence over people. And I think that, in cities across Canada, I think it's going to become interesting, especially places like Victoria, places like Vancouver. I think even like Ottawa, Toronto, Montreal, we're going to see a step change in terms of a focus on what's going to be important in cities. And it's not going to be, big cars and transportation getting people across the city. And hopefully people moving back onto public transportation, bicycles, walking, and whatever.
Well, that might all be done based on the wants of the people or suggestions of what we might want, versus, you look at what's happening with some Dutch cities and having to retreat inward because of rising sea levels. They're doing it, and they're adopting this out of the box thinking, one would think. Yeah, because it's an absolute must. It like, this might not be an outlier, that maybe more and more cities might be looking at situations like that and saying, we got to do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's one map that I show clients in British Columbia, and there's a map by the British Columbia government of the year 2100 and the floodplains in BC. And Vancouver and Victoria, places like that, are really, really going to have a hard time. And I'm choosing them because I think they're the most prominent in Canada right now, and where there needs to be focus on very similar initiatives. Because, we reclaimed a lot of land like False Creek and whatever in Vancouver. But the sea's going to start taking a lot more back with sea rises, and it's going to be really tough, I think.
Well, and we've talked about this as well in the past, Nick. Politicians or those that are in power right now, looking at the bigger picture and saying, "Boy, this is something we need to do," because I'm being told by futurists like Nick Badminton that this is going to be an issue in 20, 30 years, but it's not going to be on their watch, and it might not be top of mind to the voters and the citizens that are there. So what's the motivation for someone in power to do something about a situation that's going to happen decades from now?
We have to sort of rise above our ego and our wants and our sort of, the determined needs of today, and realize that the decisions that we make today sort of ring through the annals of time. There's an indigenous principle called the seventh generation principle. It was formulated by the Iroquois. They're thinking about the 11th century. And it's the idea that you think 7 generations ahead, which I think is about 270, 280 years. And say, okay, the decisions that we make today are going to resonate through the next 7 generations. So we need to take care. I would like to see more, politics driven by that kind of thinking. I mean, my book's written about that kind of challenge of like short-term thinking's put us in this bind. We haven't cared. We've got more pollution than ever. We're stuck in this industrial complex with a reliance on oil. How do we get out? It's going to take a long time and a lot of investment, but like even what we do with getting out of that situation needs to have consideration for hundreds of years. And it's difficult for people to wrap their heads around, but it's going to be essential moving forward. And I'd like to see a framework, a futures framework for governments where people do really, buy into this longer view, because it's going to be essential for the human race.
Nick, I'm going to be talking with an author next week. Her name is Steph Jagger, and she wrote a book. It's called Everything Left to Remember. And basically what she did was, her mother has Alzheimer's. So she took her mother on one last trip to the American Rocky Mountains. And she writes in the book about how her mother, obviously with her illness, is forgetting things. And at the same time, like, she's talking about the power of nature and its healing, and how we are forgetting a lot of what Earth has to offer. And she talks about how we may have concentrated too much on having power over Earth versus appreciating the power of Earth. And maybe in this mode of planning for decades down the road, maybe that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, indigenous thinking has always had this at front of mind. Pagan thinking, I was thinking about where I grew up in England, like the paganistic rituals go back like a very, very long period of time before like Christianity and whatever. And it very much put like, Mother Earth at the center of everything. And I think now it's more important for us to slow down and really recognize the interrelationship of energy and information, transportation, and the natural world, and how that ecosystem is going to be working. I call it infinite humanity, but we have to have this big idea and this big futures consciousness about it all. And I spend a lot of time thinking about this, Jeff.
Yeah, I can tell. Chief Futurist at futurist.com, researcher, keynote speaker, author Nikolas Badminton. Nick, always a pleasure, my friend. We'll do it again next week.
Speak to you very soon, Jeff.